What is up, everybody? Liam Murphy back with John Daigle this week to break down the Week 6 DFS slate. John, how's your season been, man? How you doing?
We are in the heart of the grind of the year where you're already get a little tired, but nonetheless, this is when everything becomes a tad easier because things start making sense. So even the past couple of weeks in DFS and redraft, everything has sort of clicked. At least it made sense why it happened. So yeah, I think we're in the part of the season where it gets a little easier.
Cool. For me, best ball's been good. Season long's been good. DFS, I had been getting slaughtered. I last week almost sun ran in the Millie Maker with this lineup, which I'm not someone who is running an optimizer or anything like that. I just hand build my teams, try to jam the best plays. And I wanted to talk through this real quick. I said on my breakdown last week that pretty much every lineup I built had Ramondre, and then I built the same one with Damian Harris, just either or. So obviously the Damian Harris injury got fortunate here.
Yeah.
I triple stacked the Bills, which that's something you can do with some teams. And I've noticed some, people noticing over the years that like people like Asimo do this and etc. They like triple stack teams, which, I know some people are like, oh, you jam too much chalk here, but when you triple stack a team and you don't bring a bring back, then the people that are competing with this chalk is very low. And unfortunately, Chris Olave got injured here. Dallas Goedert just missed the bonus. The Cowboys D, I wanted to talk through with you before we jump into today's slate, because I thought the Cowboys D was a way different play than the Week 2 Bengals D. I personally locked the Cowboys D for every lineup I built. And obviously defense is not that predictive, like got lucky that it happened. But why I thought it was different is the Cowboys were facing a team that likes to pass a lot in the Rams with a terrible O-line, with a great pass rush, and it was cheap. When the Bengals played the Cowboys, that with Cooper Rush, I think it was reasonable to expect the Cowboys to kind of want to run the ball. So you don't have that many opportunities to get sacks, get picks, get touchdowns. I have been martingale and Gabe Davis, so it felt good to get there right away with him. And just, speaking of how tough this is, like I barely made money on this slate, finished 39th in the Millie Maker, 2,500, put two lineups in the 4K, had a Josh Allen, Diggs, Davis double stack. Unfortunately, I played Damian Harris in that one. So DFS is tough, guys. But feeling rejuvenated for this week. Any thoughts on anything I just said about any of that?
DFS is even tougher when the slate is high scoring and a majority of it is the chalk. That's what makes it frustrating. I don't know if you play FanDuel, for example. I play all the single entry small field stuff like the 888, the 350, the 222 over there. And I got it right. I picked Damian Harris, who was 1,200 more over Ramondre Stevenson. I got Damian Harris at 11%. Ramondre was 35% in small field. I played my cards right. I knew the ownership was going to come in my favor, and yet it didn't even matter because 1 point Damian Harris, 5 touches on the first 2 possessions, gets injured. So I'll run that back any time of the week. David Harris, 20% less roster than Ramondre Stevenson. But again, it's hard. Normally, honestly, 1 point you may not win, but you can get by with a dud in your lineup, especially in those small field stuff. But last week, it was impossible. You were just dead in the water. Brady scored 20 points. He went over 300 yards on DraftKings. Didn't matter at all because Josh Allen broke the slate. And that's the way I went, actually. I knew I had a choice I had to get off of in single entries, Bills on slots or Bucks on slots. I went Bucks on slot, and it didn't even matter. Even if you had Brady and Fournette stacked, it just didn't matter at all because no one else got there. So once the Khalil Shakir news came out in the morning, you knew Gabe Davis was the right play, even if you were one-offing him. Sunday morning news is the easiest to react to because it literally just serves you on a platter what everyone's going to do, right? Once they hear that Khalil Shakir is going to be in for Isaiah McKenzie, you know exactly what everyone's going to do. So thus you get off that play most of the time. You brought it along in the unique way knowing that Gabe Davis would still be single-digit ownership. And anyone who said, like, questioning his ceiling, literally 5 games ago. That's it, just 5 games. We saw 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, how can you question a guy's ceiling when you saw it 5 games ago? So that's kind of what's happening with Jamar Chase this week too. T. Higgins.
Yeah, I love him. I want to say,
but I mean, T. Higgins, once T. Higgins is ruled out this week, Jamar Chase is going to get steamed.
Yeah, it's tough.
And I'm still going to play him, but he's going to get steamed.
I wanted to say some things about that. One, with Gabe Davis, I actually believe he is an elite talent. Obviously, I got a lot in best ball, and I thought it was way different where the previous 2 weeks, it was terrible for me to be playing a guy who went limited practice, re-aggravated his injury. Like, looking at the practice reports with Gabe Davis, he was full practice this whole week. So I thought it was like a sign that he was finally healthy. B, I thought Damian Harris was a better play than Ramondre because I wanted the running back who had more breakaway speed against the Lions. Like, I've noticed that running backs are getting long touchdown runs. So I just thought Damian had more of that in his bag. So that's why I played him in the higher stakes single entry stuff for me. And then, yeah, like, not forcing bringbacks against some teams. Like, you don't need to force bringbacks against teams like the Bills, like the Bucs, especially in this have or have not NFL landscape we're seeing. Like, and especially like what I said last week is teams like the Bills, teams like the Chiefs, these teams where they have new pieces they're trying to gel, they're going to run up the score because they're trying to get their offense right for games that matter. They're not running up the score because they want to rub it in the opponent's faces. They want to get these practice reps in. Like Gabe Davis and the Bills have had some so-so offensive weeks, so it made sense that if they could, they were going to pour it on. All right, so enough
on your defense as well. Just remember for everyone listening that Rams Cowboys was in the afternoon too. Thus, when you saw your onslaught, including single-digit Gabe Davis hit, you could then afford to play the Cowboys if you chose to do so. Whereas, if you played the Bucs, you had to get off the Cowboys because the Bucs were terrible.
Yeah, and actually, it was kind of funny because I was driving back from a wedding on Sunday, so here was my afternoon. Got to the Florida Welcome Center, hungover. Watched the first half of the Bills game, and then they yanked it from YouTube TV because it wasn't competitive. Listened to the games, was kind of was a little tired, so threw on some poker. Had to pull over and other rest stops to check. I was like, oh goddamn, I have an actual sweat here. And I knew my only players in the afternoon game were Goddard and Cowboys D, and I was 40 points off of first, and I was like, is there even a pivot to do? Maybe it was sharper to go Goddard to Ertz and just eat. But I just knew that if Goddard had a 30-point game and Cowboys had a 20-point game, I was going to be top 3 in the Millie Maker. And
I think Ertz was higher rostered than Goddard as well, which is what we expect, which is always really odd because Ertz doesn't have a top 6 performance. He's not him and Tyler Higbee. They always get played every week because they're cash game options, but they don't scare you, right? You can fade them every week. Who cares? They don't have ceilings. So those aren't really players I play. Whereas Dallas Goedert breaks a slate at his best.
Yeah. And I mean, and Arizona was a tight end funnel. And I think I ran bad there too, where Philly got some O-line guys hurt and then they stopped passing as much. But anyways, we're on to week 6. So how I usually do this is we go through DraftKings. Before we did that, though, I wanted to run through some key injuries that we saw last week. Obviously, Rashad Penny out for the year, putting Ken Walker firmly on the map. Both of the Arizona running backs, other than Eno Benjamin, seem out for this week. So Eno Benjamin, chalk's going to be a thing. Need to monitor the situation in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines and Deion Jackson. Damian Harris looking unlikely, so Ramondre chalk looking like a big thing. Any other big? Michael Thomas, I think, is trending towards a play. And Chris Olave, we don't know with his concussion. T. Higgins looking, maybe he's even been ruled out already. I don't know. Any other big injuries you wanted to touch on?
Rashad Penny out, so Ken Walker's also chalk. That's kind of the theme of the slate is how do you play Ken Walker, Ramondre Stevenson, and Benjamin? Because everyone's going to naturally also want to get on Bills Chiefs because they get a cheap skinny stack and and Ken Walker. So I'm still trying exactly to figure out what I'm doing. I think it may lead me to, unfortunately, you're going to hate to hear this, of course, but I think I am going to get off Chiefs Bills for the most part. I've played this game so many times that nothing phases me anymore. So like I know that I have a better shot of winning if I don't get on the chalk and the 30+% ownership everywhere that Chiefs Bills is going to garner. And you just hope it's a slowed down game since everyone just assumes it's going to be like the last postseason appearance. So I hope it's a good game, but I can't imagine overstacking that game and then playing and Ken Walker because that's what everyone's going to do. I don't think that's how you win tournaments this week.
Yeah, I have a take on that game once we get to it. But so usually we go game by game here. So let's just jump into the first game. San Francisco at Atlanta in the Dome. This game is a 44.5 over under with the 49ers -5. Usually you just go position by position. So, Garoppolo, Mariota, any way you're sneaking these in on DK?
No, you just can't this week. We have Josh Allen's 30 points per game. Josh Allen hasn't finished outside the top 5 in any game just yet at quarterbacks. Like you can't sneak in a cheap quarterback that doesn't have a top 5 ceiling. That's why the lowest I go this week is Geno. We'll get to that game eventually, but no, there's no way. You just can't.
I will note that the 49ers for a long time have struggled against mobile quarterbacks. So with Cordell Patterson ruled out, we saw a little bit more rushing usage for Mariota last week. So it's not out of the question that Mariota could get 100 on the ground and put 2 in. I'm talking like 1% ownership here, Millie Maker type stuff. So it wouldn't shock me if Mariota shows up with a 30-point game.
And if you're going to play that route for the large fields, no Nick Bosa for the 49ers as well. It's kind of a letdown spot for San Francisco too, because this is the second time they're traveling coast to coast in back-to-back weeks. We knew they weren't going to have any issues with the Panthers, but now injuries to the offensive line, injuries to defense, go traveling yet again. It is a much tougher spot, honestly, for them this week.
And I think this Atlanta D is better than people assume. So moving on to running back, obviously Jeff Wilson firmly in play, but I will note that it's looking like Tyrion Davis-Price is going to play. And I think that changes a lot. Like he saw 14 carries against the Seahawks, did almost nothing with them, which is, a problem, but I've seen worse 4K plays for sure. Any thoughts on the Tyrion Davis-Price, Jeff Wilson, or any of the Atlanta guys?
It also makes it a nuisance because Tevin Coleman snuck up last week with, even before the blowout, he had 4 carries to Jeff Wilson's 12 through 3 quarters and was involved on the first drive. And we know Jeff Wilson isn't using the passing game, doesn't catch passes. So anyone in that backfield that is taking away any amount of touches from Jeff Wilson, it's bad since he's basically touchdown or bust. So now it makes me more shy away from Jeff Wilson as well as the entire backfield. Tyrion Davis-Price, when he was active in week 2, 14 carries to Jeff Wilson's 18. So just
was that like garbage time? Do you remember?
No. It was actually like they were both involved. That was Jimmy Garoppolo's, remember, first game when Trey Lance got injured. And so they leaned on 2 running backs instead because they kind of had to throw out their game plan without Trey Lance. But I would imagine
this is an egregious price, $4,900 on Jordan Mason, where he's like,
they just forgot he existed.
What is this?
I think he's played 2 offensive snaps. He's literally only active every week for special teams.
I've never seen a worse price in my life. I mean, Jeff Wilson gonna be really low owned, and I don't know. I don't think they want to have Jeff Wilson be the strict guy. Like he's been known to get banged up, so I think they want to get TDP, some reps. He's a rookie. He does different things. So it's not going to shock me to see TDP get 10 plus carries in this game. Moving on to wide receiver. Sorry, go ahead, John.
No, I was just saying in his first game back, perhaps.
Yeah. I think Debo every single week is an interesting play. Should always be relatively low owned. He can obviously do it after the catch, kind of a letdown spot last week, maybe a get right spot this week. Ayuk, a little bit interesting to me. other than that, kind of a fade. You have any interest in Samuel Ayuk or anyone else?
No, it is intriguing though that Deebo Samuel, he didn't get his first touch last week till the 2-minute warning in the second quarter. It was really odd. Then he came off the field and started shaking his arm a little bit as if he got hit hard or something was wrong beforehand, which is why he had limited usage. It's frustrating on FanDuel as well because like last week he was chalked because he's so cheap, 7,300, and they only bumped him up to 7,600 this week. So I don't know yet what I'm going to do with him, but I don't think I'll be playing him on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think he'll be single digits, no doubt, with all the places. So an interesting low on play. Tight end, really interested in George Kittle this week. I think, against the Rams, no tight end is getting there. I think like the job against the Rams is just the block. Against the Panthers, they did not need to air it out. Atlanta's a tight end funnel. So I think Kittle is a great, interesting play this week. Kyle Pitts, I don't think I can do that at 4,200. No. Any thoughts?
We're only talking about 3-4 tight ends on the slate we're taking seriously because we're trying to match Travis Kelce's and Mark Andrews' ceilings, especially since Travis Kelce will naturally get brought along in any Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes stacks. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And yeah, sure, George Kittle has proven in the past, not this year yet, but he's proven in the past that he does have that ceiling. So something to think about, especially if we need to find unique ways around Chiefs Bills.
And I think he'll be cheap because like Ertz is 4,900. People are going to want to play Ertz against the Seahawks in a high total. So defense, I think both are in play if you want some low-owned Ds, but there's better spots to me. I'm more interested in playing the Falcons at 2,500 against Jimmy G than the 49ers at 3,700.
I agree.
All right, moving on. And we don't need to spend a lot of time on interesting games, but quarterback, I don't think either are in play for me. Running back is very interesting. How about you talk us through it?
Nick Chubb's in an awesome spot because you can get the game script narrative of Bailey Zappi going on the road in a obvious letdown spot after the Lions were in an obvious letdown spot. Like Zappi was announced as starter and Vegas didn't budge from the Patriots laying 3.5 points. They just gave the Patriots the hook knowing they were going to smash the Lions last week because the injuries.
I just wanted to say real quick that this is a 43.5 over under.
Yep.
And the
total is increasing. The total is increasing every time too. Nick Chubb is also naturally, if you want to get there, your pivot off of Ramondre Stevenson because when you move to wide receivers, you have Jacoby Myers with 37% target share the past 2 weeks. He had a 38% target share, over 100 yards and a touchdown from the same quarterback he's going to have this week in week 5. So, yeah, I think there are actually multiple ways to get off Ramondre Stevenson, knowing that a lot of running backs are chalk this week. If you choose to do that, Nick Chubb is a way to uniquely pivot off of Ramondre Stevenson.
It's a tough price tag for a guy who doesn't catch passes, but, he's shown the ceiling, obviously, without it. I personally think Ramondre is good chalk. It should be noted that last week, I think Pierre Strong and J.J. Taylor were inactive, so they didn't have a choice when Damian got hurt. They had to ride with him. I think Kareem Hunt is in play every single week. He's leveraged off of Chubb. He's leveraged off of Stevenson. And then I guess there's worse 4K plays out there than Pierre Strong, who has breakaway speed. Wide receiver, obviously Jacoby Myers is in play at his price. The guy I wanted to talk about and who I will be sprinkled into my large field stuff is Tyquan Thornton, a burner who I was shocked returned so quick from his collarbone injury. He kind of plays in the slot sometimes himself, like a big slot type guy. So Myers is a little banged up. I don't know what kind of injury, if this is just a usual maintenance or whatever, but I'm interested in Tyquan Thornton at 3K, really low owned, opens up some roster constructions if you're going to be jamming some chalk. And I think they need long-term to get him involved because Nelson Aguilar is not the answer. They need speed on the field, and they just don't have anyone who's fast other than Tyquan.
Nelson Aguilar was the loser last week in routes run, even in a blowout where their usage was a little bit misconstrued since they benched their starters. Nelson Aguilar still ran the fourth most routes among their receivers. They just put him on the bench and said, we're done with this. So Tyquan Thornton would be in, we assume, 3 wide sets, maybe still sparsely used as he recovers, but still in 3 wide sets in a competitive game.
Yeah, got 25 snaps last week. I don't know how that shook down between garbage time versus competitive, but also leverage off of Ramondre chalk, which I think it's good chalk, but obviously if Tyquan stealing touchdowns, that hurts Ramondre. Any interest in Amari Cooper? What are our thoughts?
I don't think so, but it wouldn't shock me if he popped up, because I thought that Donovan Peoples-Jones, after he had a 30% target share in week 1 and then just disappeared the next few weeks, that he was done. But now we've seen the past 2 games, he's seen 16 targets, as many as Amari Cooper. So he actually is sort of popping up now and taking away targets overall. So yeah, I don't think I'll be on Amari Cooper, but he's interesting.
Yeah, low own guy. I don't know if I love targeting the New England secondary, but interesting. I think David Njoku is in play every single week, gets easy targets. He's kind of expensive. What's up with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith? What's our read there?
The Patriots hide their injuries, so everyone is basically limited. If Jonnu Smith is out, very clearly Hunter Henry is also pivot off of Ramondre chalk, given his touchdown equity and the fact he played 98% of the snaps last week. He'll be in an every down role yet again, and even skinny stacking with Nick Chubb makes sense because both can get there in that kind of game script.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Defenses, I think both are in play, but not my favorite spots against 2 teams who are probably going to try to run the ball. I like to target teams that are going to try to pass the ball and have bad O-lines. Moving on to Jets Green Bay. Don't think I'm going to play either of these quarterbacks. Are you? In like large field stuff?
No, we haven't seen a ceiling performance from Aaron Rodgers yet. His highest finish is QB 12 so far this year. They're just a sluggish offense that throw through their running backs more often. And Zach Wilson has been awful. He's been yet again. The Jets really rely on Zach Wilson. Like, how he develops is how far this team can go. And man, like he got way overblown when he returned. It came down to his final drive against the Steelers. They got 3 interceptions against Kenny Pickett, and they still needed Zach Wilson to go 5 for 5 on the final drive. But he threw 2 picks in that game and completed 50% of his passes. He's 3 of 16 under pressure this year. He's been terrible. So now we don't want Zach Wilson.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention, sorry, trying to do this before each game, 45.5 over under. The Packers are 7-point favorites, which they opened up at 7.5.
That's a good line too, because the Jets, think about what had to happen. Teddy Bridgewater, Tyreek Hill, and Teron Armstead injured in the first half, and the Jets still, you don't see this in the box score because they won 40-17. But if you look closer, the Jets only led by 2 points with less than 10 minutes remaining. The Jets are not good.
My take
Breece Hall's fun, but the Jets aren't good.
Yeah, my take is I don't really like, for sports betting angles, I don't really like taking the Packers as big favorites just because they play so fucking slow. So it's like,
sure,
it's totally hard to pile on. I think Breece Hall is going to be lower owned than he should. He's clearly moving up in the world. Got vultured by Carter for 2 1-yard touchdowns after he put the team on his back. Aaron Jones is going to be a low owned guy who's trending up and taking this backfield more and more. AJ Dillon, maybe I'm a fish. I want to see it first, but I guess he's a really, really low owned guy who obviously could fall in the end zone 3 times. Any thoughts on these running backs?
Aaron Jones is interesting if you can get there, given the trending down usage for AJ Dillon, a lower share of backfield touches in every game, a decreasing target share in every game, so much so he saw 0 targets last week. Aaron Jones handled a season high, over 70% of the team's backfield touches last week as well. So that's kind of a direction I'm leaning. If it were negative game script, though, seeing as many targets, Breece Hall as Michael Carter last week, 2 each, is a little bit concerning. But I would imagine it's Breece Hall out there in negative game script. And honestly, relative at his position, 5,800, knowing Hall's ceiling is interesting.
Yeah, he could have had 50 points last week if he got
Right.
those 2 touchdowns. So yeah, I'll be playing some Brees Hall for sure. Wide receiver, I think, is very interesting because my take is you do not play wide receiver ones against the Jets because Sauce Gardner is legit. So what that means though is Alan Lazard's off the table, but it makes Romeo Doubs really interesting and Randall
Mhm.
Cobb really interesting as low owned plays. Um, the Jets side don't want to go there, but I think Cobb and Dubs are interesting because of the Sauce Gardner bit.
Dobbs is definitely interesting. Lazard has seen increased opportunity the past 2 weeks, 8 targets, 20% target share. The past 2 games is emerging with more opportunity. But at the same time, as you mentioned, he'll be matched up against Sauce Gardner for whatever that's worth. And
I
Dobbs
mean,
is
he shut
very,
down Chase. He shut down everyone. I mean, Tyreek got injured, so that's a little different. And but he's shut down all ones
and
so
even
far.
though Randall Cobb popped up for 13 targets,
Yeah,
one,
what
it's
are we taking about that? What's
I
our
think it's
takeaway?
just a blemish. I mean, he had 12 targets coming into the game, so it's not something we can trust at all. And Dobbs was still very clearly the number 2 wide receiver. Still ran around on 88% of drop back. So like Dobbs is out there in 2 wide sets every single time. That's why I definitely just trust him far more than Cobb.
Cool. Tight end. Don't know what happened with Conklin. Like, did he get hurt? Did he insult Zach Wilson? What is happening here?
No, but oddly enough, oh yeah, they used CJ Ozoma over him. Like coming into that game, Conklin had to run around on 78% of dropbacks, and then he ran around on just 51%. I think the number was like it was really odd. So I guess we just lost another cheap tight end. I don't really want to trust the situation. 35% of dropbacks last week. Ozoma was at 50%.
Tunyon definitely can always play him. Needs to fall in the end zone twice though, or maybe even more. Defense. If I was going to play defense on the side, I'm playing the Jets, but don't really like either of them with 2 teams. Like the Packers are going to try to run the ball, and the Packers defense is just too expensive, in my opinion. Jacksonville, Indy, quarterback, whatever. Let's jump into running back. What's your takeaways?
If Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines plays and Nyheim Hines is out, Taylor was already handling 75% of Indy's backfield touches. He had outsnapped Nyheim Hines 45 to 21, 22 on 3rd and 4th down. He was actually their conversion down back as well. The lion's share of touches only grows. It only increases if Hines is out. So Taylor, who has the highest ceiling of any running back in the slate, is going to be 5 to 8% rostered. It's a great play, especially considering that everyone looks at the last time these two teams played and Jacksonville dominated. But remember, the Colts were coming off 90 plays in an overtime and then traveling the next week to Jacksonville for an early kickoff. It just made sense that Jaguars dominated that game. I think game script goes differently this week. So I do like Jonathan Taylor quite a bit. I don't know how we get him in just yet. It's probably between him and Nick Chubb, but I think Taylor's an awesome play.
That's interesting context about the overtime Houston game there. I am going to be playing some ETN at low ownership. I do it every week. He's got to fall in the end zone one of these weeks. He was good last week. James Robinson was not. I think the beats are still saying Robinson is the one. Obviously, Robinson had a fine game against Indy last time they played, and ETN had a whatever game. But I'm just kind of hoping that Jacksonville looks himself in the face and says, we can win this division. Let's get our most explosive players on the field. And so, ETN, low ownership, I'll fire some of that.
Doug Peterson even came out afterwards in his presser and said, quote unquote, it's my fault we didn't get ETN more touches. The train is going one way right now.
Deion Jackson, I actually drafted this guy in best ball a little bit after rosters were released. I'm sure, and I looked at the ownership. I'm like one of 30 people out of 400,000 that drafted this guy. Any interest if JT's ruled out, or is JT just in?
He was limited Thursday. I think he's definitely in. And the way I've been playing concussion since the Tua injury is basically if you get one, you're out the next week. The NFL's very clearly playing it much safer right now. So I'm under the assumption JT's in, Nyheim Hines is out.
I agree with that, but it looks like Olave might play. So that is a little interesting.
Maybe so.
All right, going on to this game. I Tua has been ruled out. Bridgewater has been ruled the backup. I don't know anything about Skylar Thompson. I'm assuming he's not good. But my take is I love targeting wide receivers who run deep routes against the Vikings because they have been eviscerated by these types of wide receivers. Christian Watson.
They're allowing the highest rate of 15+ yard gains through the air this year.
Yeah, like we saw Christian Watson drop an 80-yard bomb. We saw Quez Watkins do it for the Eagles. Even the Bears offense, I played some Mooney at low ownership. It didn't work, but Kirk Cousins, I think there are worse plays on the slate than Kirk as well. I think you can double stack him in a couple interesting ways. It's hard when you're giving up, the ceiling to the Josh Allens and whatnot, but Kirk at very low ownership is interesting. Moving on to running back, need to monitor the Mostert Edmonds news. If Mostert is healthy, I think he's a great play who will be lower owned than he should be. What do you think about the Dalvin Cook, Madison, all of that?
I don't think I'll be on either this week. We've also seen Madison take away from Cook in the passing game since Cook suffered re-aggravated shoulder injury. Madison also a true question mark for this game. So he could get ruled out, thus steaming Dalvin Cook. So maybe if that's the case, I get on Dalvin Cook, Tyreek Hill, skinny stacks. If they're both healthy, I much prefer Tyreek Hill to Jalen Waddle. Like his floor has been a 20% target share this year. He's just dominating targets. Has the higher floor and ceiling than Waddle. So Tyreek Hill, no one's going to play him. And as you said, it's such a sneaky spot against this Vikings secondary.
Yeah. I usually like playing running backs against Miami because Miami plays an aggressive man defense that blitzes a lot. So that leads to some checkdowns. That's why I jammed Breece Hall a lot last week. We saw Singletary do it in the Bills game. So Dalvin Cook, especially if Madison's out, I've seen worse plays there. If Tua was in, I would be all over Tyreek and etc. I think Jefferson's in play. I think Tyreek's in play. I think Waddle's in play. I think Thielen's in play. All the big four here. Obviously, love Tyreek. And, Jefferson is what he is. He's just so expensive. But could be much lower owned than Diggs, which maybe he shouldn't be. And then I think Irv Smith is firmly in play at 3,200. Just needs to get a touchdown or two. Seeing decent targets and opens up a lot. Any other thoughts about these wide receivers, tight ends?
Would you play Irv Smith on his own, or you would only play him with Kirk Cousins?
I would play him on his own if I like. I'll play him in Bill stacks and whatnot, in large field GPPs. Miami kind of a tight end funnel. Irv, like we've seen the ceiling potential in the game, like this Eagles game where he could have had like 30 points if he didn't drop that 60-yard touchdown. So it can come and it will be natural leverage off of Cook and Jefferson, which will always catch some ownership. Moving on to a very interesting game in the Dome. Sorry, guys, I didn't say the over-unders in the past couple games, but we're moving forward. This is a very low total at 43 with the Saints +2 against the Bengals. I've seen worse plays than Joe Burrow. Is Jameis playing this week? What do we think?
I didn't think so, but it is trending in that direction, which is interesting since before injury, he was just launching prayers downfield every single time he got to throw. So it does give them a little bit of more pop in this game, the Saints offense.
Yeah. Burrow, expensive, but I think you can build some teams in the Superdome. Running back, Kamara only for me. I think he's a bit of a worse play when Jameis is the quarterback versus Dalton. Mixon has all the usage. I guess he's due for positive regression. I just don't like playing Mixon, so I'm not going to do it. Any thoughts at running back?
Kamara is fine. There's just a lot to shake out between Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Jameis Winston. Like half their team is questionable. So I don't really have a spin on it just yet. If it is the same situation as last week, then we know because we saw it last week. Kamara is just fine as the team's arguably number one receiver. And that's when it'll get interesting with our skinny stack opportunities, pivots from the Bengals.
Yeah. Moving on to wide receiver, you mentioned it earlier. Jamar Chase is one of my favorite plays in the week at pretty low ownership, I would guess. Now, what's hurting is, I guess T. Higgins might not play. I think Marshawn Lattimore was ruled out, which I wanted him in because my take is that Marshawn Lattimore could not shut down Justin Jefferson. I do not think he can shut down Jamar Chase. Chris Olave, if he's injured, feels like you got to play a little. I mean, if he's in, you got to play a little bit of him each week. Michael Thomas is, I think, going to play. Any other thoughts on these wide receivers?
If Olave's out and Thomas is in, he's really interesting. Vice versa. Yeah, and vice versa as well. But yes, Jamar Chase is definitely the play. He's averaged a 32.9% target share with T. Higgins off the field since last year. So like the targets only go one direction. And he's still getting all the targets. They've been underneath because Joe Burrow has a top 5 amount of drop back against cover 2. Thus, it's harder to get downfield to Chase, and they've been keeping him closer to the line.
Do the Saints play cover 2? Because like my take is that they don't. Like they're like we play our defense how we play it.
They play a combination. So no, not as much. Also, the Saints are getting a league low pressure rate against quarterbacks. So Burrow, his struggles have been against pressure, and I don't expect him to struggle in this game. So yeah, I like Chase a lot. And like you said, I think Burrow doubles they might be a little thin, but for very large fields like this, I think they're in play.
Yeah, I would say Chase, and the guy I would want to stack him with is Hayden Hurst if he's in. Seeing a bunch of targets, I think you could play him instead of Irv too. As a cheap guy, just needs to do what he did last week and totally could do it.
In the 2 games, T. Higgins exited and didn't return weeks 1 and 5. Hurst has averaged 7.5 targets and run around an 81% of dropbacks. Like it hasn't been Tyler Boyd or Mike Thomas, who's still running around on 70% of dropbacks whenever Higgins leaves. It's actually the pivot has actually been Hayden Hurst. So yes, Burrow, Chase, Hurst sounds awesome.
And definitely a spot, guys, where you want to monitor the practice reports and the injury news for this game. Moving on to our one of our last 1 o'clock games. I think this game's interesting. Lamar at very low ownership is always in play. He can break a slate anytime. Daniel Jones, I will not be doing because I like some other cheaper quarterbacks, but he could do it. I just, the team seems to be trying to hide him rather than feature him. Any interest in Daniel Jones at low ownership, or what do you think about Lamar's spot?
Not Daniel Jones, but I do think we get a Lamar ceiling game here, which is why I'm so interested in it. Wink Martindale, nothing has changed going to the Giants. He's sending a blitz at the league's 4th highest rate right now. And historically, Lamar has struggled against the blitz, but this year he's awesome. 8.5 yards per attempt. 7 of his 12 touchdowns have come against the blitz. Mark Andrews also, with the Giants sending a blitz, and also not a lot of teams have run blitz from cover schemes this year. That's the way the NFL's gone, which is why points are down. They're making my NFL more worse every single week, which is frustrating. But the Giants actually leave their corners out in the island on the blitz for cover 1. And Mark Andrews against man coverage this year is 52% of his targets have come for 11 yards per target against man coverage. So like the Lamar Andrews stack, whether you run it back or not, makes so much sense because it's also 2 players going against Chiefs Bills, but in particular Mahomes Kelsey stacks who can easily match Mahomes and Kelsey's ceilings. So Lamar Andrews, man, is such an awesome play this week.
Yeah, I love Andrews. Lamar always in play, but I've been playing Andrews more with Josh Allen.
Okay.
Moving on to the running back, J.K. Dobbins is one of my favorite plays of the week. A little bit of squeaky wheel narrative where he inexplicably got no usage last week. Don't really know why that is. He's in a good spot. He has natural leverage off of Andrews. He's natural leverage off of the chalky running back plays and Ramondre and Ken Walker. So I could totally see J.K. Dobbins hitting 20 plus points in this game. And he was getting more targets in some competitive games. I don't really know what happened last week. Again, I was driving during it. Saquon, a little too expensive for me this week, but you could play him every single week. Any thoughts on Dobbins or Barkley?
You can play Saquon if you play Lamar or Andrews in skinny stacks. Again, we're going to have some choices at the top of running back, especially because we can't play. Well, maybe you can play two of them, but ideally, probably not with Walker, Eno, and Stevenson there. Not really on Dobbins personally, just because he was concertedly limited last week. That's what they said, that they're still limiting his touches. Maybe they don't do that this week. Maybe it's just fine. But remember,
I looked at the practice reports. He's not on it. So it's like,
okay.
Like
and maybe it's obviously a player we want to be ahead of. We want to be early on before everyone sees it. So yeah, definitely.
Wide receiver, I think, is very interesting. Two of my favorite cheaper plays in this game in Devin Duvernay and Darius Slayton is the only guy out there. The Ravens secondary is trash. So give me Slayton with a little bit less mobile Daniel Jones, who has to be a little bit more patient and hit his wide receivers. I thought he looked good in that game against a good Green Bay D. Any other thoughts at wide receiver? Obviously, if Tony's in, I want to be ahead of that, but I don't think he is. Like, I don't know what's happening to the Giants.
You can really only play Barkley or Slayton. No one else really matters. They drop down David Seals routes too.
Wait, sorry, is this a true? This is a rich narrative if true. Is this the?
I don't recall the game he blew out his knee, but it makes sense.
Revenge right there. Sorry, go ahead.
There, yeah. No, you're good. You can only play Slayton or Barkley really on this Giants. David Sills ran the fourth most routes on this team, so they pretty much took away his role. And Richie James, despite running routes, just doesn't do anything. We don't have to play him at all. So I'm looking at Slayton as well. I think is interesting. Wandell is supposed to return this week. Yeah. I don't know if he's going to be limited, but again, for a very large field, it's a situation to be ahead of. And I do like Duvernay as well. I don't know how to play him just yet, but 21% target share behind Andrews last week. So
explosive.
He was already explosive, but the results were a little fluky since he was depending on touchdowns. But also, if you're going to give him more opportunity, now's where I get intrigued.
Tight end, we already said. Mark Andrews, I like way too cheap for what he is. I think he should be played every week. And personally, I like Andrews straight up over Kelsey this week, and I do not force that bring back, but we'll get to that game. Defense, if I'm going to play one, I would play the Giants, but I don't really want to play either.
Right.
Tampa Pitt, a very interesting game. My take of watching Kenny Pickett is he is better than people think. Against the Jets, he had like 3 picks clunk off his wide receiver's hands. Against the Bills, a lot of this was garbage time, but he was moving the ball when that game was competitive. He has great pass game weapons. He could get garbage time this game. I'm just he's playing a worse defense in that he's not playing the Bills. Like the Bucs defense is very good, but I'm very interested in Pickett. I think Tom Brady going back to the well too. You know, the narrative out there is, oh, you got to play Josh, you got to play Lamar, you got to play Mahomes. So Brady in a very similar spot where he's playing a bad team. Could go nuclear this week. Any other thoughts on Brady or Pickett?
Brady is in an awesome spot because we just expect him to take it to the Steelers. The Steelers have no answer on defense. They're 0-8 without TJ Watt. It's bad news. So I think it's going to be, again, a lot of negative game script for Kenny Pickett, a lot of garbage time, and then we'll see how that pans out.
And we haven't seen the rushing from Pickett yet, but he has some like Daniel Jones mobility type in his repertoire. Running back, Fournette should be quite chalky. I think Rachaad White is interesting at lower ownership. Not my favorite play. Jaylen Warren is trending more and more over Najee, where he's like this explosive scat back guy. But I'm not going to be paying up for Fournette too much personally. Like, I don't know what this 11 targets was. Like, is this just here to stay?
I mean, he had 7 targets the week before.
It's there.
What's happening is he's becoming a receiver. Like, he's consistent now as they get more and more healthy, and they don't have any options, honestly, behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Like, Julio Jones is injured. We don't take him seriously anyways. Russell Gage isn't doing anything. He's also banged up. Like, Leonard Fournette is their third receiver.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wide receiver, I think Mike Evans is a great play this week where we've seen that Godwin is like playing a full complement, but not when the team is up. And Brady wants to have that explosion game. He wants to get the offense right. So this is the spot. So very interested in Mike Evans. I'm interested in Deontay, man. He looks great. He's like a lock for 10 plus targets a week. And I'm interested in George Pickens. I think Pickens and Deontay is possible. I'm a sicko, so I'll be building some Pickett to Pickens and Deontay stacks with Mike Evans or whatever. Maybe Fournette, just game stacking that, opening up a ton. Any other thoughts on these wide receivers?
That's about it. I like Mike Evans quite a bit as well. I'm going to see how I can fit him in, but Chris Godwin ran 6 routes in the second half last week because they're limiting him still, since he already has re-aggravated his injury in blowouts. And if we expect this to be a blowout, if we stack Brady thinking he just runs up 28, 35 points in the Steelers and we call it a day, Mike Evans will be on the field. Chris Godwin may not be. So I like Evans, whether
I think
you play Brady or not.
Right? Didn't Godwin come up with a new injury? So
yeah,
that's scaring me off.
I like Evans as a standalone piece too.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And then, unfortunately, with Cam Brate back, we can't play Otten with confidence.
We can't play with confidence, but I think you can.
You don't want to play him?
The team might. I mean, if they're taking Godwin off, who the hell are they throwing the ball to? You know, like they're going to be forcing it to Brashad Perryman. Cade Otton's a rookie. You know, I wouldn't say this.
He looked good too. He led the team in red zone targets last week.
Yeah, I mean,
Brady trust him.
I played a lot of him last week.
Yep.
Freiermuth, if he is back in, I've seen worse plays too. But yeah, not the most confident spot playing.
It's a jam target tree, but if Freiermuth is out, Zach Gentry will play every single down. He'll run around on every single down. He came in immediately for Freiermuth last week and ran around 56% of dropbacks. Like they just used him as their receiving tight end.
So yeah, that's actually very interesting to me because some of my lineups I want a punt tight end, and I'm like, God damn, there's no one this week. Where last week there was a couple, and so Gentry's the guy. Freiermuth was out for me. Mm-hmm. One more game until we get to the 2 most interesting games of the week. Quarterback, a pass for me, but you know, PJ Walker's got some mobility. I've seen where he's cheap. Anyways, cheap. I think McCaffrey. Like you're on the Chubb side, I'm on the McCaffrey side this week, where the Rams play a lot of zone. So hopefully, like I want to see the PJ Walker splits with McCaffrey. Do we know how he's done with PJ Walker versus like Cam Newton in the past, stuff like that?
I do not. The only concern is, you know, Panthers obviously running the fewest plays per game. That's why McCaffrey isn't really getting there because they're not even on the field. And the Panthers fired everyone, DC, Phil Snow included, except for the guy calling plays, Ben McAdoo. So I worry about the fallout here that nothing changes.
Interesting. Cam Akers, they want to get him in a get right spot. You can run on the Panthers. So their O-line is trash, but, you know, they just want to make it happen. So I could see, you know, like he's going to be like 1% owned. He could definitely fall into the end zone in this game.
That's definitely a large field.
Yes,
that's a large field.
I'm talking through large field here.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I am bringing a small field mentality to it.
Cooper Kupp is egregiously expensive every week. He's a little banged up. Really the only wide receiver that has any interest for me. I guess DJ Moore could be better with PJ Walker, but that's just rough.
Honestly, rough. Ben Skowronek now has a higher target share than Allen Robinson on the season. It's a disaster.
Allen Robinson's about to be 3K and no one playing it. Tight end, Higbee every week is in play, getting crazy target usage. No one else really. And then defense, the Panthers D, cheapest defense on the slate. By the way, I've never seen a slate where the cheapest defense was 2,400. And one of my favorite defense plays. So
they're gonna be high rostered too. That's the issue. But again, like Cowboys last week, Panthers, Rams in the afternoon, you can lock the Panthers in, and then you know whether to pivot off of them, move some flex around, move some salary around to play another defense instead.
And they're a good defense. Like they're not like their offense is trash, but their defense is good.
The only concern is that I don't know the statuses of J.C. Horn and Brian Burns, and they're huge for this defense. Like they're the most important players. So if they're out, it may be a situation where the Rams literally just walk all over them.
Yeah, I mean,
watch the injury reports for their defense.
Definitely need to do that. My take also on like usually when like there's like the interim coach, I think the narrative is like, oh, this team's about to fall apart. But that like almost never happens. Like the players are probably ecstatic to get rid of I can't remember his name now, that coach. Out of sight, out of mind forever, hopefully. Matt Rule. I'm not happy you reminded me of that. No. But I could see the Panthers playing with a little bit of fire. So I think the 10-point line in that game is not a good line. Like what has the Rams done to prove that they're 10-point favorites over anyone?
I mean, they were 5.5-point favorites over the Cowboys last week, and it almost felt fishy betting the Cowboys because it's like, what have the Rams done? They're broken. Like they've done nothing.
I thought that was the worst line on the league.
I mean, it was so bad that, again, I thought it was a bad bet because I was like, this line is so bad. I don't know what's happening. I thought we were getting tricked. At least I saw, like, we could easily see through the Patriots line. The Rams one just didn't make sense either, and the Cowboys just didn't have offense, and they walloped them, just ran them over.
So both of these quarterbacks are firmly in play. We're getting to the two interesting games of the week. Kyler Murray, what's your guess on ownership? 5%? I don't know.
Gosh, if it's 5%,
I'm
teetering spot between. Yeah, he's definitely one of my top 3 quarterbacks on this slate.
I like Kyler a lot. Geno, I mean, we got to give it to him, man. Geno is good, and in these teams, both have terrible defenses, both of them. So definitely a spot to game stack quite a bit. So I like Kyler. I like Geno. Running back, Eno Benjamin at 4,600 chalk is going to be a thing. Kenneth Walker at 5,400 chalk is going to be a thing. Do we think Keontae Ingram mixes in? He's kind of a bigger bodied guy. I could see Eno not being jammed up the middle. What's your thoughts there?
It's interesting because Keontae Ingram was a receiver essentially in college out of the backfield too. So that's what I worry about him maybe taking targets, but also he hasn't been active for a game. They really haven't taken him seriously to this point. So I don't know. The thing where I'm at though, is that if I play Eno Benjamin, Kyler Murray makes a lot of sense. And Eno Benjamin is also a receiving back, and Kyler is the unique piece you want to tack on to Eno because that's the direction no one will go. So if I play Eno, I think I'm just naturally going to be forced to play Kyler. And again, I love Kyler. So he hasn't had a ceiling performance. He's averaging a career low 5.6 carries per game, but Seattle is the tide that lifts all boats. Seattle makes everyone. They made Jared Goff the QB1 of the week. Like Kyler could go nuclear this week.
Yes. Definitely like Kyler this week. Who's worse chalk, Kenneth Walker or Eno?
Gosh, I think Ken Walker, honestly, and Ken Walker's
because of price, because of
potential game script, really. So Seattle really
I think it's Eno for me. Like
that's fair.
I just it's not going to be surprising if we see like a 10 carries, 5 targets, and okay, so that's good. Like whatever, he's probably like 15-point floor, but I don't know if Eno has as many like 25-point tournament winning games as and if Eno at 15, you can win a tournament. So maybe it doesn't matter, but
we're also going to have a choice because you can't play. I mean, maybe you can.
You can play both of them against each other as your team.
Well, no, it's not that. It's that we also have to factor in 5,600 Tyler Lockett being chalked too.
Like who's banged up. So we're gonna let's jump right into wide receiver.
Yeah, like how do you play like Walker, Benjamin, Lockett? Like it's just insane.
Yeah, Arizona,
you have to bring along Kyler.
Arizona's been lit up by slot wide receivers for a long time now. So Lockett, I really like because of that, and also he's just too cheap for what he is. DK Metcalf is going to just be leverage. I don't like him as much, but so the field won't. I love Hollywood Brown. Love him season long. Love him every week. Gets crazy targets. Maybe will be a little bit lower owned than some of the guys just because he's so expensive. And Rondale Moore, I think, is good chalk. People might disagree, but I think he is good good chalk to me.
I think it's fine for DK. I only worry about his ceiling since last week his usage changed. He just became what he was last year. Ran 80% of his routes from the slot and had a 2-yard depth of target. So not going downfield. Whereas when AJ Green was injured 2 weeks ago, Moore was strictly a boundary player and did have a double-digit depth of target. That's a player that has a ceiling. I don't know if Moore has a ceiling I'm worried about.
Yeah, I guess the ceiling to me is like 10 catches, maybe house calls one.
Yeah, and honestly, it's Seattle's defense. He could. I mean, we saw Taysom Hill on 9 carries break slates. Like on FanDuel, he got played as a tight end because it was such a bad tight end slate. The winner in small fields was smart and just played Taysom Hill as pivot off of Kamara Olave chalk. Rondale Moore could do that. Like he could just take it a dump off and run it upfield.
Yeah, I don't have a great read if he's going to come in at like 25% or 10% or like.
The issue is there's not many other legitimate
openers.
cheap wide receivers. Yeah, because even McKenzie I think is $5K, and that's kind of as cheap as everyone's going to go. Maybe people throw in.
And there's questions about McKenzie, so we'll get to that. Ertz, I like him a lot this week, especially for DK, where I play most of my action. Just getting crazy target usage in a high total game. Maybe the field doesn't like paying up for these 5K tight ends too much. And I think Noah Fant or Disley at low ownership in a good spot. I'm more interested in Fant, just betting on athletic profile. Could definitely be a low own piece in this game that kind of makes the chalk fail. Any interest in these guys?
You just have to mix them around in your lineups because there's been no consistency between them. They pretty much play all of them, Colby Parkinson included, and there's no rhyme or reason to which one's going to run more routes in a given week.
Moving on to the premier game of the week. Every week I build Josh Allen bill stacks and don't see a reason not to here. He's been yanked in the fourth quarter, multiple times this year.
This month.
His wide receivers seem to be fully healthy for the first time in a while. Great spot. Pat Mahomes, I do not think is in a good spot personally. Again, this Bills defense is not what it was last year. This D-line is monstrous. And Patrick Mahomes not having Tyreek Hill really changes this game where I am not forcing a bring back against the Bills, even with the Chiefs. And if I had to, my favorite bring back is not Kelsey. It is like I would straight up rather build a Bills double with Andrews than Kelsey. And if I had to bring a bring back, it would be Jerick McKinnon and maybe Juju, because the Bills are going to sit in zone coverage. They're going to rush 4, and they're going to make Patrick Mahomes be patient and take the checkdowns while you have Von Miller and Greg Rousseau and co coming off the edge. And we just saw what the Raiders did. Any thoughts there?
And Mahomes does have a top 5 touchdown rate on the year against 4-man rushes. And remember, last year they didn't blitz Mahomes. In the playoff game, these two teams combined for 15 blitzes. They're not going to blitz each other. Allen has also been awesome against the blitz this year, whereas he struggled last year. So I imagine the Chiefs play cover 2, cover 3 the entire game too, and make Allen take whatever he can get, which he's been good at this year, which is also kind of why I'm expecting a slower paced. I think it may be a lower scoring game, honestly. Completely different matchup than the playoff game. But at the same time,
way different than that playoff game.
Yeah.
Agreed.
At the same time, there's nowhere to go with the Chiefs, honestly. As you said, you're taking chances on their running backs for dump offs, but beyond that, like Mecole Hardman and Justin Watson have 1 touchdown each. And those are the only 2 touchdowns a wide receiver on this team has scored at all. Like, you can't take Juju and Marcus Valdes-Scantling seriously. Juju Smith-Schuster has 8 targets in 4 or 5 games this year, and you wouldn't know it because he's literally just a median player. There is no ceiling here. And so that's why everyone's naturally going to go to Kelsey, because Kelsey has accounted for 47% of Patrick Mahomes' touchdowns. He's the only player who's like really offering anything, unless you want to take a chance on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But Edwards-Helaire hasn't had more than 12 touches in any game. He's just getting lucky in the box score. So I am definitely concerned about like where else to go here. Maybe you do, like you said, just take the chance on running backs.
Yeah, I think if you like if the game flow goes like this, like Bills come out, score a deep touchdown, whatever, a turnover, Bills score again, we're gonna see McKinnon and CH we will not see.
Hmm.
Because remember in that Raiders game when they fell behind,
Mhm.
it was the McKinnon show. They were like, okay, we're done with like they're like trying out CEH, but when they're behind, they're not going to do it. Singletary is firmly in play in competitive game scripts. Could definitely, if the Chiefs do try to make the Bills play patient ball, which I think that was also mainly because Gabriel Davis was banged up, is why the Bills had to play patient ball, because he's the deep guy who opens it up for them, not purely because that's what they want to do. But if they do, this could totally be a 7 target plus game for Singletary. Again, on the Chiefs side, the McKinnon off of the Eno chalk is a good play. Love Stephon Diggs, love Gabe Davis. I think Shakir is interesting in that Shakir is the guy where, let's say Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis goes down for the year, he's going to slot in the outside. So I think Shakir earned more of a role last week, and McKenzie just has blazing speed, so he's always interesting in a team that can run a little bit of man, which the Chiefs do. But I think they want to get Shakir in the mix because they need him in case Davis or Diggs goes down. He is a guy who is just talented. So I don't think Shakir is going to be like relegated back, like see you later, like just for injury.
My only concern is I think he actually will be double-digit rostered because what he did last week, and he's the cheapest piece in this game. Like he's cheaper than Pacheco, and so naturally he's going to be brought along.
I think there's worse plays than Sky Moore where maybe the Chiefs look themselves in the face after Juju has like 7 more passes clink off their hands, and they're like,
Sure.
what the fuck are we doing? We're losing this game. Let's get Sky Moore some usage. We saw him competitive spots. They got him like involved. Like it's so weird what they're doing. They get him involved right at half, and then they are like, okay, see you later. Doesn't make any sense, but I think he's interesting. At tight end, I don't think Kelsey is going to play this week because I think the big Kelsey games against the Bills was because Tyreek Hill was there. And with Tyreek Hill not being there, if you're the Bills, why don't you just say, beat us with Juju, beat us with MVS, beat it? Like, you can't. We're going to shut this guy down. And the Bills have great cover linebackers. So, he's like, you got to build one bring back with him because I guess he can have box scores like this, 25 yards, 4 touchdowns, like truly outrageous. Dawson Knox, I don't know if he's playing this week, but firmly in play if he does. And if he doesn't, I think Quentin Morris is a great play where like almost had a touchdown last week.
Yeah.
Was down at the 1. Looks way more athletic than people think, I think. So Quentin Morris, an interesting guy.
I think you can even break your brain and flex Andrews or Kelsey since they are basically wide receivers and play Quentin Morris too. Because like Quentin Morris is a cheap, awesome tight end in an amazing matchup who's running routes. That's all we want, especially from Josh Allen.
Would you rather play Kelsey or Andrews?
I like Andrews. I like Andrews a whole lot. Given everything, given how many people are going to play Kelsey compared to Andrews and everything, I like Andrews.
The routes on Morris, I don't remember, but he was really involved. You see, he got 5 targets.
Was
and remember that like they were running backups in the third quarter,
right? 65% routes run.
Yeah.
Which oddly enough is what Dawson Knox was averaging prior to injury. Why are they using Dawson Knox less this year, by the way?
He's been banged up. I think it's pure injury. Like against the Rams, all tight ends are blocking against them. And then he had an injury flare up this week. Like I still believe in Knox long term. It's just he got injured and now he's injured again.
And I guess the first 2 games, the Bills blew out their opponents. So like we didn't get to see the full usage. Okay.
So I believe in him once he's fully healthy, but we want to see if he is. At defense, if I'm not playing the Panthers, the defense I'm playing is the Bills. If we remember back to that Rams-Chiefs shootout game of years past, defense got in there with some strip sacks, some fumbles. This Bills D is nasty, man. And they've had so many games where they're close to getting Mahomes on the ground. So hard to believe that they get like pick sixes and stuff, but crazier things have happened. And playing the best defense in the league against a team that is not what it was in the past in the Chiefs seems, and the Bills are getting a lot of pieces back. They're getting Ed Oliver back. They're getting Jordan Poyer back. Tre'Davious White is not going to play, but he's practicing. So pretty good spot for this Bills D at a very cheap cost.
Defenses are good pivots in this game too. Whether you play the rest of the pieces or not, I do like the defenses in this game.
Yeah, and I have no problem doing like Josh Allen, Diggs, Davis, Bills D. They can all get there together. Okay, so John, let's build a lineup before we get out of here. How about you start us off at quarterback? Guys, do not dupe us in the Millie Maker. Come on.
If you started us, you'd be going Josh Allen, right? I don't want to take away from.
No, let's go Kyler. I think we both like Kyler at low ownership.
Yes, let's agree. I like Kyler a lot.
All right, and then running back. How about you give us one of your favorite guys here? I forget.
Quite a bit. I like a lot of them.
Dude, my thumbnails are electric, so I don't want to hear any of that.
Did you say you like Nick Chubb?
I'm more on the McCaffrey.
You like
side.
McCaffrey?
I think I'm on the same page where the Kyler Eno is interesting and opens up a ton of salary.
Adam,
there.
and you pick the next running back.
No, and then I'm cool, Chubb. He's not my favorite pay up spot. I think Dalvin has a similar ceiling.
Let's go Dalvin. It is a Millie Maker. Let's go Dalvin. No one's gonna play Dalvin, and then we can play Tyreek.
Okay, let's get a little Tyreek. Are we worried about Tyreek with Skylar Thompson, or is Tyreek just gonna do it himself?
Thompson's interesting because he had a really good preseason. He's also very athletic. He got thrown into a tough spot last week. Teron Armstead, I don't know his injury report just yet either. I think it's enough going in Thompson's way though, where Tyreek can get there.
Okay, let's play
at 2%. No one's gonna
play Tyreek. I like that. Who do we want to stack with Murray? Do we want to play Hollywood? Do we want to play Ertz? Do we want to play?
Well, the issue is we already
Rondale?
We have two 7,500 players, so we're gonna need a cheap player for sure. Maybe we have to play Rondale. Yeah. All
right, let's play Rondale. We'll move him into our flex after, but I usually play 4 wide receivers and DK. Who do we want to bring back on the Seattle side? Do you want to get gross here and play Noah Fant?
Let's see how it looks. You can
okay. John's laugh is not a good sign for that play.
There's Lockett there too, but let's see how Noah Fant looks.
Okay, let's chuck a defense in here to see what we're working with.
You can play the Bills defense.
Let's play Bills. All right. We got 6,600. So that would be Gabe Davis and do you have a preference between Diggs and Davis against Kansas City?
Put in Jamar Chase.
Oh, we're both on Chase train.
We got 5,500. What does that give us?
That gives us a Chris Olave bring back.
Ooh. But that means also then we're not playing Bills Chiefs. Are you okay with that?
Well, we are in the D.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're trying to run pure here, those teams can still Preston, brother, we're trying to win $1 million here.
We have the Olave bring back, or you can go. Well, no, we have Fant over Ken.
What's
Walker.
our pivot if Olave's ruled out? I mean, I don't believe that you practice in a limited capacity and then you're out.
That's what didn't McKenzie do that last week? He practiced limited. He just didn't. You have to still clear the concussion protocol.
Yes, that is fair. McKenzie did do that. So okay, let's bring up some contingency plans. If he is out, do we just play Ayuk, or do we want to play around with the build a little bit?
Jacoby Myers.
Oh, okay. What's his? Do we got him?
5,300.
Okay, cool. So I'll throw Olave in. If it's ruled out, I'll pivot to Myers, who is also playing a 1:00 game, I believe. Is Myers for sure a go?
I believe so. Yes.
Just limited.
He's going to be limited all week and then probably play. I mean, he was just fine last week.
Okay, cool. So Guys, never play the afternoon guys in your
Correct.
flex. I know it takes an extra step sometimes, but got to do it. All right, guys, don't dupe us here, and I'll be pivoting Olave to Myers. And if we do that, do you want to stick with Fant or do you want to play Irv Smith at 32? I think we just stick with Fant.
I think we stick with Fant. Again, we're trying to run pure. Fant is the play.
All right, brother. You have 50% on this team.
Cool. I can Venmo you.
What? No, do not. Do not. It's free for your
$10.
time. If I post a screenshot, I might not remember those. So you gotta remind me. Hey, brother,
Okay.
send me the 500K. I get the ticket though.
Okay.
John, tell the people where they can find you and what you have going on in the content streets.
At 44.com, you can still use the promo code Daigle10 if you're in the redraft streets. There's a lot of redraft content left, a lot of redraft season left. And I believe that code will get you 25% off. If it doesn't, DM me, we'll get you 25% off. We'll make sure it happens. And subscribe to The Most Accurate Podcast. It's what it's called on iTunes and Spotify. The 4for4 podcast, that's where I'm at every single week talking matchup previews as well as DFS content.
Yeah, guys, John is very knowledgeable and brings humor to the job, which if you're like me and you get killed in the DFS streets, you got to find people that make you laugh. So make sure to give John a follow on Twitter and listen to his content. He is great. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Good luck this weekend, guys. And I'll be back maybe with some start sits Sunday morning or maybe not. I'm a wild card out here. Peace.